everyone. So this is the 40 lines for the Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. Remember that the story this extra comes from the beginning of the story. And basically the story is about revenge, about how how Montresor was able to finally get to the end of his revenge with Fortunato. So we start with the first line that says the 1,000 injuries, and you can see here that's hyperbole. Okay, remember that he didn't really suffer 1,000 injuries, but the whole idea of of getting this he's been hurt so much that he's trying to exaggerate the whole thing. So again, remember that this particular writer, he tends to use lots of his stories are written in the first person. So he's trying to connect with the reader, saying, 1,000 injuries, you just don't understand that, I've put up with so much. So then let's have a look at the words, because the choice of diction, the choice of language here is very typical of the times, and it's kind of over the top. Okay, so I vowed revenge, I would be avenged. Okay, so this type of, immolation, this type of language is very strong, very passionate. The choice of this particular language is this, okay, that he's trying to convince the reader that he wants this revenge, that it's very passionate, it's justifiable almost to the sense. Okay, and it's interesting again that we have here direct speech, right? In the second line where it says, you who so well know the nature of my soul. You, who's you? The reader. So he's talking to the reader, and it suggests this certain closeness that you have between the voice and the reader. Okay, so he wants to convince you that he did the right thing. You as a reader, of course. Okay, so it's interesting how the choice of language again, all right, is used. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely sexual, but the very definiteness which I was resolved precluded the idea of risk. The choice of language here, he's trying to justify himself. He's trying to also mix you up a bit. Okay, the whole point of using these large, long words is he's trying to sound eloquent. He's not just any type of, he's not like a lower class type of avenger. He wants revenge, and we know here from the choice of language his position in society. And then we have, for example, look at the way that we use here the word dressing and undressing. Okay, a wrong is undressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. So here, the way that we're using dress and undress, remember that 1,000 injuries, okay, it's referring to also to the first part, to the hyperbole, that the way that starts the story. When you are hurt, you open a wound, okay? The wound, remember, is that type of opening of the skin where the flesh, you can see the flesh, the blood, and everything. And the way to heal these type of wounds is that you have a dressing. So the verb is to dress the wound, means to cover it with a bandage. So a wrong is undressed. So the wrong is undressed. So, it's forgiven. When retribution overtakes its redresser, it's equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt. So when retribution overtakes, so once we have this retribution, everything's okay. But then it's equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt. So he feels that if he doesn't get this revenge, his pain will never end. Okay? So he feels that this revenge, that we don't know yet what's to happen, but we know this is the whole beginning is foreshadowing what he's going to tell us about the fact that he killed this man in the worst possible way. Okay? And the way that the language is used here, it's very formal. Okay? He's trying to he's suggesting a certain distance and formality. Yet at the beginning, you who know me so well, the nature of my soul. So it's contradicting. So he feels that he did one thing and then he does another. He tries to be distant, but yet try to connect with the reader. So again, mental instability is a key feature of Poe's writings. So then when we move on, Again, remember in this case, all the purple we're talking about the choice of language. Okay. Now here we have certain expressions. Okay. So coinership. Coinership is a French word which means the love or taste of for fine objects of art in general. Okay. So here we're talking about the coinership of wine. So it means that Fortunato, the weak point is that he felt that he was he says he was a respected and even feared man, and his great sense of pride was knowing about wine, about the taste, about the whole ability of actually saying this is a good wine, this isn't a good wine, that type of thing. Now, coinership, the fact is that we chose here a French word, adds sophistication to the text. Remember that this is written in the romantic period, where certain aspects and certain things of different languages added status. The fact that we choose a word in French mixes, okay, it calls a mix of culture, but also adding a certain level of of sophistication, which is what we saw at the first part. His sophistication is quite interesting. Okay. Virtuoso, all right? It's an Italian word to mean that a person with a special knowledge or interest. Okay, so we have two words, Italian and French. Okay, Italian, it makes sense. We have Fortunato, Montresor, very distinct Italian names. All right, so the mixture of cultures here. Okay, French resembling, love of taste of fine objects, of art, of sophistication. Virtuoso, bringing in this whole idea of a person with a special knowledge. So we can see from the choice of language, from the diction, that we're trying to show a certain level of sophistication. But at the same time, this specific certain level or sophistication is kind of mixed up here when we have in painting and Gamery, Fortunato, like his countryman, was a quack. This tends to be a kind of a vulgar word at the time. It means that he's a bit crazy. He's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So there's a contradiction again. All right. So the contradiction of being a quack and yet coinership virtuoso, we have a sense of understanding the voice. The voice is mentally unstable. Okay. There's a lack of balance in this text. There's formal from one part, informal, personal, distant. So one of the greatest themes of many of Poe's stories is this lack of mental stability. Okay, again, using expressions that are not, are not a part of everyday language, of course, of the times of the Romantic period. Okay, he accosted me with excessive warmth, so he approached me with excessive warmth. Again, a word from French that comes from accoster, Italian accostar. So it's a word that comes from, has been coined from two other languages that have already been mentioned. Okay. Again, the diction. I should have never have done wringing his hand. Okay. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. This suggests violence. The wringing of someone is like the squeezing the life of someone. So again, we have vulgar language, then with accosted, formal expression, and then again, a vulgar suggestion, violence. It's very interesting the imbalance of language that he has made throughout the text. All right, and then we have imagery. So here we have visual imagery. He had on a tight-fitting party striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. Sorry. As you know, this particular text comes from, it's coming at the bottom, now at the bottom where it says, in the middle of carnival. Okay, this is a period of time in the year where it's a suggestion of time of freedom of sacrifice. Remember that this, a lot of our texts, especially from the Western culture, we have a lot of resembling and always going back to the Christianity. Carnival was before Lent. Lent is the 40 days before Easter, in which the Christians would have a strict fasting, a moment where they would give up certain things. So, for example, some would give up alcohol, some would give up red meat on Fridays. It's very common for the Christians to eat fish on Fridays during just before Easter. And it's those 40 days of Lent. So before those 40 days of sacrifice is Carnival. Okay, so this is where Carnival comes in. It's like a celebration of the flesh. It's freedom, it's sacrifice. Okay, it's a freedom of sacrifice, which the next day they will follow through. So what happens is that, everything is lost. Lots of people are having this striped, these costume parties, meaning that they can resemble somebody else. They can hide from their true identity. These type of expressions are very common in our text. Okay, and then we have the conversation between Fortunato and Montresor. Amontillado, I have no doubt, Amontillado. So this repetition is that the way that Montresor was able to get Fortunato away from the people, away from the party, was lying to him about Amontillado, about this famous wine. Okay, I'm not sure. Pronounce it in English, Amontillado is going to be safer than in Spanish. Okay, even though it's an Italian word. So we have this thing of this is the way that he was able to capture Fortunato's attention. An important aspect also to mention is that throughout this opening paragraph, opening 40 lines, we do not know the name of the voice. It's interesting how, again, it's written in the first person, it's lots of direct speech trying to connect with the speaker, and there's an imbalance between formal and informal, between personal and distant, that we'll be looking at in class.